Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Up until researching this Jeffrey Epstein case, anytime I heard about sex trafficking, I automatically thought that it was some scummy-ass dude or a group of dudes who were involved in trafficking women or children. It never occurred to me that so many women played a crucial role in such things as Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking enterprise. And I had no idea just how important women were to so many of these operations until I started digging a bit deeper. I was always under the impression that you would have some scuzzbag Ron Jeremy looking cat running these sex trafficking operations, right? And in a lot of cases, that's true. You have some scuzzbag dude who doesn't give a goddamn about anything but money, selling humans like they were cattle, right? And that's definitely the case. There is a lot of that. But one thing that is overlooked, and I still to this day, I don't see many people understanding just how deep it goes as far as women in leadership positions in trafficking rings. I think that it's something that should be discussed a little bit more, and I think it's something that needs to be brought up in the overall debate about human trafficking. That way, girls, young boys, women are aware that it's not just these seedy-ass gross men who are trying to snatch them up and put them into modern-day slavery. There are women involved, women who will try and win your trust, women who will try and win you over. And then, once that part of the grooming process occurs, you'll be moved to the next step and groomed a little bit more until you're at the point where you're being trafficked. And I didn't realize what a huge and crucial role women had in a lot of these sex trafficking operations until we dug deep into the Jeffrey Epstein case and cases like it, such as Nexium. Today's article is from Insider.com, and this article is from August 23rd of 2019. But it goes into the women who are involved in the sex trafficking world. We're talking a number of roughly 38% of sex traffickers are suspected to be women, folks, okay? That is a huge number. And when you just look at the two cases we're talking about, for this instance, Nexium and the Jeffrey Epstein case, you see that there is no chance in the world that Epstein or Rainieri would have ever been able to do what they did without the help of their women human trafficking compadres. The headline: a shocking 38% of sex trafficking suspects are women, and many are former victims. Author Kelly McLaughlin. In the weeks since Jeffrey Epstein's August 10th death, eyes have turned towards the disgraced financier, pedophile, ex-girlfriend, and alleged madam, co-conspirator, fellow child abuser, Ghislaine Maxwell. British-born Maxwell was not named in the recent indictment of Epstein, has denied any wrongdoing, and has never been criminally charged. But Epstein's accusers have said she played a large role in his alleged sex trafficking ring. Now remember, this is from 2019, right? So obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell has been charged, and we know that the people involved in accusing Jeffrey Epstein have said that Ghislaine Maxwell was not some shrinking violet, okay? She had a leadership role. She was just as much involved as Jeffrey Epstein, and she needs to be held account in the same way Epstein would have been. In lawsuits and survivor testimonies, Maxwell has been accused of coaching young girls for sexual abuse, working as Epstein's top accomplice, and being instrumental in setting up a network of victims and other employees who found underage girls. She's also been accused of actual abuse herself. Let's not forget that. And let's add in the perjury charges that we know about now. Let's just go ahead and throw those in there as well. But you see, Somehow, Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't named in those indictments the second time around. And I always found that curious. And I always thought that eventually we would see more indictments in the original, the second Epstein arrest, right? I always thought that there would be just a huge balloon of indictments if they were able to keep him alive and he was able to see trial. I thought that we were really going to be in for a huge, gigantic federal RICO case. But with him dying, obviously, that all went out the window. But the focus should and has remained on his co-conspirator and co-boss, Ghislaine Maxwell, for her role in setting this whole entire thing in motion. Maxwell is far from the first woman to be accused of helping run a sex trafficking ring. Due to the secret nature of sex trafficking, numbers surrounding the criminal activity are often unreliable, but it's estimated that globally, some 62% of suspected traffickers are men, while 38% are women, according to a 2015 study from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And that number is crazy to me. I would have never expected that it would be such a large number of women who are involved in sex trafficking as this number suggests. 38%? That is a huge, huge number. And I would have never ever guessed before researching this Jeffrey Epstein case that women played such a huge part in human trafficking. Now, that might just be my own ignorance on the subject prior to learning about it, but it just doesn't seem like something that women would be involved in, right? It's just not something that society is ready to accept, I don't think. The number of women suspects is noteworthy. On average, globally, the share of women suspected of any crime is 18%, the study said. So it's double, okay? Double the amount of women, as far as percentage points go, are involved in human trafficking as they are in any other crime. That is an insane number. 2 times as many women are involved in human trafficking crimes as they are involved in any other crime. It's hard to get my head to wrap around that, to be honest with you. The NXIVM sex cult, a massage parlor human trafficking ring, and Epstein's sexual pyramid scheme. Victims have said women played large roles in recruiting for all 3 operations. In February, a Florida prostitution sting led to the arrest of several women who were accused of running a sex trafficking ring through massage parlors. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft was entangled in the bust after he was charged with soliciting one of the sex workers. Again, a lot of these, especially these kind of massage parlors and stuff, there are a huge amount of women involved in this. A huge, huge amount of women. And a lot of it seems to come from Asian countries right now. There is a serious amount of exploited Asian women in the United States of America. And a lot of them get caught up at these sort of massage parlor type situations. And then in turn, they're exploited and abused by sick, disgusting, rich bastards like Robert Kraft. You need to go to a massage parlor, bro. You can't have a sex worker come to your home or go to a place where it's legal to engage in such activity. Why would you go to a seedy-ass massage parlor where chances are the women are for sure being trafficked? You're too stupid to understand? Up from down? In June, Keith Raniere, the former leader of a self-help group turned sex cult NXIVM, was convicted on charges centering around what prosecutors called a society of sex slaves within the community. Several women have pleaded guilty in the case, admitting to detaining sex slaves, branding women, and recruiting women to join the operation. If you're not familiar with the NXIVM case, I highly suggest you read about it. The parallels are very similar to what happened in our case, the Jeffrey Epstein case. Not so much as the sex cult aspect of it, but the grooming process, I mean, and how Jeffrey Epstein used these women to do his bidding. Keith Raniere did the same thing, but more with a psychological mind control. NXIVM was a whole bag of what the F, right? I mean, it is definitely a subject worth diving into. I think it's worth having a podcast on even, right? At the very least, a 4 or 5 part series about NXIVM is beneficial to anybody who is investigating sex trafficking, in my opinion. And the new documentary, the new miniseries on HBO called The Vow, that is going over what happened in the NXIVM case, is a great watch so far. There's been 2 episodes on as of last night, and both episodes were engaging. Both episodes were educational, and both episodes were very well done. So if you're looking to watch a good documentary and something that is in the same vein as our case here with Jeffrey Epstein, I highly suggest checking out The Vow. Kristen Hauser, Chief Public Affairs Officer for the National Sexual Violence Resource Center's Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, told Insider that one of the most common pathways for a woman to become involved in the inner workings of a sex trafficking operation is to have been a victim herself, often from a young age. And while that is the case, I'm sure, for most of these types of operations, as far as, the cartel trafficking rings, basic, your run-of-the-mill human trafficking ring, I'm sure that is the case. But when we're talking about Allison Mack and Ghislaine Maxwell and these high society human trafficking rings, I do not think that's the case. What I think it is the corrosive rot of having so much power and viewing yourself and the people around you as better than the other people in the world, the lessers than you, leads to this sort of behavior, in my opinion. It is a psychological malfunction with people like Ghislaine Maxwell and Allison Mack. As their abusers break them down, indoctrinate them, and convince them to go along with all the things involved in that lifestyle, I really want to keep the responsibility on the abusers. I think it could be seen as a way out, Hauser told Insider. If you want a way out of that, making yourself more valuable as a moneymaker, as a broker, you try to climb out if you can. And while that might be the case, while the guy's alive, like such as Keith Raniere inside of NXIVM, with Jeffrey Epstein, once he was dead, I think all of that went out the window, right? If you were under his spell, and that's what the Core 4 are saying that they were victims in this case as well, then why haven't you come forward after his death? Why haven't you come forward now that Maxwell's in prison? It just doesn't make sense, right? In the case of NXIVM, prosecutors said women, including Smallville actress Allison Mack, recruited and groomed women into being sexual partners for Raniere. In April, Mack pleaded guilty to charges of racketeering and racketeering conspiracy in relation to her role in NXIVM's alleged sex trafficking. Here's why that's important, okay, folks? Racketeering and racketeering conspiracy are what? RICO charges. If Allison Mack is worthy of RICO charges, why isn't Ghislaine Maxwell slapped with them yet? Unless, of course, they aren't done charging her. But you see here that it is well within the scope of RICO to use it in a human trafficking case. And this is what I've talked about with NXIVM and why I've brought NXIVM up so many times. The parallels, the way that these cases are structured are very similar. So it would make sense that if they're using the most important and potent tool in their toolbox, RICO, against NXIVM, that they would most assuredly use it against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Federal authorities arrested Claire Bronfman, Nancy Salzman, Lauren Salzman, and Kathy Russell, accusing them of using harassment, coercion, and abusive litigation to intimidate and attack perceived enemies and critics, according to the indictment published by the Daily Beast. Boy, that sure sounds like Jeffrey Epstein, doesn't it? It sure sounds like Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, Nadia Marchinkova, and the rest of them, doesn't it? So why is there not a RICO case here yet? What are they waiting for? Is there more that they haven't shown us? Do they have something hidden up their sleeve? Whatever it may be, They better have a damn good explanation if it is not RICO, considering what we know about NXIVM. In allegations against Epstein, Joseph Ricari, the lead Palm Beach detective on the case, said the financier, pedophile, was essentially operating a sexual pyramid scheme in which girls would recruit other underage girls into the trafficking ring. In an investigative report published last year, the Miami Herald's Julie Brown identified about 80 women who say they were molested or otherwise sexually abused by Epstein. And again, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but this had a RICO case written on it all the way since the first arrest. And the only way this does not become RICO is if he was being protected from someone on high. So you folks do the math, right? All right, you do it for yourself. 2 + 2 = 4. Power can be weaponized by abusers, and their behavior can become normalized. Hauser told Insider that sex trafficking operations aren't confined to one particular demographic. They hit all levels of social and economic strata, and power can be weaponized by abusers at any level. We know that that's the case, right? And we know that there are high-profile sex trafficking rings that are populated by the so-called elites amongst us. We've seen that, okay? That's not a conspiracy theory. We're talking about it right here and right now with Jeffrey Epstein and NXIVM, okay? And we also know that people that are in positions of power are much more able to weaponize that power and manipulate people who don't have as much power or who don't perceive themselves to have that much power. So we understand that it can happen at all levels, but there is a different kind of aura that comes with it when somebody like Epstein is the one conducting the trafficking ring. I think it's fair to guess that in lots of situations like this, the person is often manipulated into doing some things they weren't comfortable with when it all started, Hauser said. It becomes normalized, and that's for sure. And that goes for the survivors, right, as well. The girls that came, they thought it was normal. It was normalized behavior to them because of the grooming process. That's what all of the whole grooming process was for, to make sure that things seemed normal when the abuse began. In sex trafficking operations, women may be used to transport victims, manage and handle victims, and find places to set up operations like brothels, clubs, and massage parlors. As a 2015 report from the UN Office on Drugs and Crimes notes, women frequently play the role of recruiter because women are more likely to trust other women, and traffickers know to exploit that trust. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Now that I see things clear, now that I see the big picture of human trafficking and what it entails, it makes a lot of sense to think that women would play a huge role here. I had no idea, honestly. I would have never, ever made that leap until I started looking into this case. Because many female offenders in sex trafficking operations are also former victims, prosecution can be difficult. According to the 2012 Urban Institute study identifying challenges to improve the investigation and prosecution of state and local human trafficking cases, female sex trafficking suspects are 16% less likely to be arrested for human trafficking and 16% less likely to be prosecuted than male suspects. When prosecuted, however, women are 11% more likely to be found guilty. And I think those numbers need to change. I think it doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. If you were involved in a sex trafficking operation and you were caught, I think that you should be prosecuted no matter what. And I don't think you should get off either. Now, if there are circumstances that you were abused previously to you becoming an abuser, then of course that must be taken into account, but that can't be the only thing that's taken into account, right? There's a lot of things that go into it. Women can teach and train them about the job, according to a 2014 report from the Regional Academy of the United Nations. Often, a relation of confidence and even more, a relation of friendship might develop between the victims and their offenders, the study said. Subsequently, the line between offender, advisor, and friend gets blurred for the victim. And that's what we saw here with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Core Four. They would bring these girls in. They would make it like they were their friends, their confidants. Jeffrey cared about them. He was going to pay for their school. I'm going to get you and your mom in an apartment. And that was all to get them comfortable. To make sure that when the abuse started, it was all normalized. And folks, none of this could have ever occurred without the women who were helping Jeffrey Epstein. None of it could have ever occurred without all of them playing their part, without all of them accepting their roles as human traffickers. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. If you'd like to find me on Twitter, you can do that as well. BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, all of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. As for me, I'll be back later on.